18 Watertown City Plan Commission meeting. Roll call, please, Brandy.
Stein. Here. Olson. Here. Stonebarger.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Kays.
Here.
Dolly and Colhane are absent. We have a quorum.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. We have a motion.
I'm going to make a couple amendments to the agenda. So what you guys have in front that I presented to you is for agenda item number 6, the plat of lots 28A and 28B in Block 2 of Hidden Valley Edition. That plat has changed since your agenda packets were sent out. And then also for agenda item 7, for the plat of Flyway First Edition, that plat has also changed. We'll present that accordingly.
Okay, with those changes, do we have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Kays, a motion, second by...
Second.
Mr. Hanson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, approval of the minutes of February 8th, 2018 meeting. Motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
Ms. Olson, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hanson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item number 3, vacation of 2nd Street East. Brandy?
Okay. Okay, so the petitioner is Joe, I'm sorry if I butcher this, Gio Venetone, is the president of St. Martin's Evangelical Lutheran Church and School, and Orville Tacker is the president of Bethlehem Evangelical Lutheran Church. The background to this application is the applicant and owners of the real property are the owners of both properties abutting each side of 2nd Street East, who have submitted a petition to vacate that portion of a public street right-of-way. The petition was submitted because of the public safety concerns of children crossing the street from the school to the playground and for future building and parking lot expansion. An image of that future expansion plan is attached in the agenda packet. This is the exhibit that was submitted for the vacation application, and then this is the site plan for future expansion if this vacation goes through. The engineering department has reached out to Watertown Municipal Utilities as well as private utility companies, and there are no utilities residing under this portion of 2nd Street East. This includes gas, water, and sanitary sewer, meaning there will be no need to retain a utility easement over the proposed vacated right-of-way. If vacated, the owners must be aware that the removal of 2nd Street East will be solely the responsibility of the property owner and applicant. The city will no longer be responsible for that portion of 2nd Street East if the vacation is approved after publication and the 20-day waiting period for recording. If approved by Plan Commission and City Council, responsibility of the vacated portion of public right-of-way will then return to the parent parcel, being the adjacent platted property of those portions of 2nd Street East, and will become private property on April 13th, 2018, which would be back to the property owned by St. Martin's Church and School. Some facts, the existing zoning designation is R1, which is single-family residential district. The adjacent is also R1, single-family residential district. And otherwise just in that request for action, it just gives the setbacks and whatnot, which will be important when it comes time if they are able to do their expansion. Recommendations: City staff supports Plan Commission recommending resolution number 2018-04, which is the vacation of the public right-of-way, as presented to City Council.
Has there been any response from the surrounding neighborhood?
I did hear quite a bit of response. Most of it was their concern about if it were actually impacting a surrounding alley in that area. But after they learned that it was 2nd Street, they weren't as concerned.
Okay, in a situation like this where the property owners own on both sides of the street, who do we actually send notification to in that area?
So for a vacation, by policy, actually only the adjacent property owners have to sign off on the petition. But out of courtesy, because this is a whole street block, we sent it to, do you want me to show you the map that we sent to?
Yeah.
Give me a second. Just so then people were informed, as this could be impactful to the neighborhood. So the properties that are highlighted right here is the church, and then 2nd Street as it exists today, 81.
Okay. Any board questions for Randy?
I have several. Do we have any idea how much traffic travels down 2nd Street in front of the east side of the school presently?
No.
Do we know when the school plans on doing an expansion project? Is it 1 year, 3 years, 10 years?
I believe that they would like to, and not speaking for the church, I'm sure they'll speak at the public hearing, but to break ground this summer.
And then the other question is that once vacated, who's responsible for continuing the curb line across where the street currently exists?
That once they would destruct 2nd Street, that the private individual would.
So is there some sort, is that like some sort of development agreement that you have in place with the vacation? Is that I'm just asking for a policy standpoint. How do you do that?
That would probably come with approval of their final plan.
Okay, with that, I'll open the public hearing. If anybody's here to speak for or against this, would you please come up, state your name, and
I'm Gary Simons, and I'm on the planning building committee that we have for St. Martin's. Just a little history. We have been toying with the fact of the early childhood expansion project, and we went to the city with different options, and they actually came back to us saying that it would be beneficial to vacate the street for given reasons. To your question, has there been a study on the traffic? I don't know if there's anything on record, but I know last year when we first brought this to some people in the city, the police department went up there and did the counter thing across there. I don't know what the outcome was on it, but they did do that, so I'm uncertain of that. As far as breaking ground, our plan would be that this year we would like to do the parking lot end of it, and that way when we do the parking lot, we can have that all in place prior to building the building. That way we're not obstructing, our everyday or every year activity of the classroom. So it's hoped to do the parking lot this year, and then possibly the following year or the year after that to do the building expansion. But at this point in time, we haven't went any farther because of the vacation process.
Mr. Chair.
go ahead.
Question. So you're talking about doing the parking lot on the north end, or the parking lot part of it, but when would you expect to tear up the actual street itself? When would that happen?
Can you get that on there, Brandy? With the parking lot of it, basically, we would probably take where the school is, or where the expansion, we haven't totally made a decision on that. But we wanted to keep the approach to the south, and we would gate that off when we vacate it to close that road. But we wanted to keep that road in there for when we do the building of the school, so we could use that for our construction entrance in and out of there without having to come through our new parking lot. And so we would probably gate off on Highland Boulevard to close it. And then when we do the construction, that's where our construction equipment can come in and out, and then we can put our rock base so we're not tracking on there. And then at the time of the construction, then we would tear that all out and finish the south end. But when we do the parking lot, the whole from the north coming down to probably about where the buildings would be, I would say that would all come out at that given time.
Why would the city give up a public street for a private use? What's the advantage to the public?
Basically, when I met with and our principal, we met with the police department, fire department, and everybody at hand on that. We talked about different things with traffic of what it would affect. And basically, the main corridor, like the fire department, they had made the comment, if they're going to go up to any place on a fire, they're going to chase up probably Maple or 81 and then go across. The traffic that comes down 2nd Street, and I think our people at the school could contend to that also, and there's also a gentleman that lives on 2nd to the south. A lot of people will come, if they're coming from the north, they turn on 12th just to stay out of the school zone. So the traffic that goes through there is probably very minimal except for our own school, church traffic. And the biggest thing after visiting with some of the people in the city is our playground is across the road right now, and it's a safety issue more than anything that we have to take the kids across the road and constantly worrying about traffic. And then also for our drop-off of traffic coming in the morning with parents and busing and things like that. 2nd gets quite congested there and dangerous because people are parking on both sides of the road and then they're trying to butt out into traffic. So it's a big safety issue for that of the way we got our parking design, and we've our architect is with the drawings that he has come up with along with Clark Engineering has come up with things to help the safety issue of that.
I can see where it would help you. I don't quite see how it would help the public, but we have a grid of streets that go in block patterns, and I'm not particularly in favor of closing any of those. We had a similar request from Immaculate Conception School back in '89, and they used the same argument that children going across the street back and forth, it was a hazard and stuff like that. And at that time, that was denied. And 200 Maple Place, they wanted to close it down because they had people going back and forth to Jenkins, and they wanted to close the street off, and that was also denied. And it was said if they want to build a walkway, they can build a walkway. But so I would have a hard time granting this request for you when there's been 2 other requests similar to this that has been shot down in the past, because I do not believe it benefits the public. It benefits your church, I agree with that, and would probably be great for your church, but you have sufficient buildable area on that property if you want to build part of that school and on the other side of the road, and then you can manage the traffic
that was
back and
something
forth.
that we had discussed about, because what we're doing is doing an early childhood, and if we were to build that across the road, and I can understand like with like IC in the school when they did that down there, the church is on one side, the school's on the other. That's kind of the way it was. And the same with 200 Maple Place and Jenkins. I mean, it's kind of two different entities and things like that. If we were to put our early childhood across the road, which we have talked about, the problem that we have is that we have situations with lunch. They would have to come back to our main building for activities like that. The gym is over there. So we would increase our traffic of children coming across the road, and in lieu of that, make it dangerous. We had also had plans of going to the south and we could put some addition to that, but there's not enough room to do what we need to do on that south side.
Can you go north?
No, we can't, because just the way where the church is built up there, we don't have room, and we don't own that parking lot to the north. That parking lot to the north is actually Bethlehem Church's parking lot.
But you could land swap with Bethlehem Church, come up with some sort of construction pattern to build to the north and put your parking all on the
Actually,
east.
when we built the church, we land swapped with them then and gave them that parking lot. and
It's still an option. I mean, it's not a dead no.
I don't think that's an option. I'm pretty confident would not be.
Well, one of the concerns I have is we never did get an answer on the traffic flow on this street. For one thing, when a typical building proposal like this is presented, again, we contact the next door, the adjacent landowners. Well, in this particular case, there's many people that perhaps utilize this street that aren't necessarily adjacent landowners that may have a major objection to closing off this street. Would you agree with that?
Probably not. I'm around there quite a bit, and obviously I didn't have the counter out there. I wish that we had those results of that when the police department did put that down there. But I guess in my mind, if there would have been a problem, I think they would have presented it to us at that time. But it's quite minimal on the traffic. And the letters that Brandy sent out to adjacent landowners, if you look at that, most of them are all to the north of that. That would go up, I think you sent that all the way up almost to 14th, didn't you, Brandy? Yep. So I would say anybody that's using that road is north of 14th there, and if some of those people were here, I think we'd probably hear from them. And then to the south, I don't know why anybody from the south would have any reason to take that going to the north, to tell you the truth, because it's a rough road for one thing.
Well, for me, that's a critical piece of information we're missing with respect to how, what is the traffic flow on that street.
Shane, if they had that result at that time?
I remember we talked about the potential of doing a traffic count up there. I don't know that we initiated.
There was one done.
Well, okay, all right.
The traffic counter was out there.
Okay, I can research those results.
Does the city have a general policy in place regarding the vacation of improved right-of-ways in the city, or a history of doing that in the past? For some of us that are new to the board,
Can you repeat your question?
does the city have a policy, or do they have a past history regarding the vacations of fully developed public streets?
I would say that generally speaking, we, or at least as I understand it, we approach these on a case-by-case basis. I would say there's probably not a consistent pattern of closing down a fully developed street.
You think of any in the community where we have a fully developed curb-to-curb asphalt street that we've closed in the last 20 years?
Did they
Not
do
that
that
I
at
can recall.
Walgreens and McDonald's?
I'm asking. I don't know the answer.
I think they did. That wasn't a curb-to-curb street, but there's actually a street right-of-way there at that time that they did have to eliminate to make that work.
Where's that?
At Walgreens, between Walgreens and McDonald's.
That used to be Spies.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Spies.
There was no street there.
it was actually a right-of-way that they had to vacate at the time.
There's been instances where we have given up undeveloped,
Yeah, Broadway.
Streets.
You guys closed down.
but I can't think of a developed street that was ever abandoned.
South Broadway would be
Broadway,
the
yes.
only one that's recently happened.
True. Any other questions for Mr. Steinmetz? Anyone else would like to speak for or against
If I could
that?
just make one closing comment.
Go ahead.
We've had the architect do some extensive work on this, and we met with the city several times with the engineer and many people at large, the mayor, and I think, most of the important people that I can think of. And we would not have proceeded with the $35,000 worth of architectural study that we have done if we weren't halfway confident that this could happen. We felt like we had the city's blessing to do this when we went to the architect. I actually presented, should we proceed with this? And there was a pretty much, yeah, I would if I was you. So that's why we're here.
Well,
Otherwise, we wouldn't have spent $35,000 to $38,000.
okay. I can't speak to that because I was unaware of any activities to that extent. But
I think we were probably hoping just for a concept, just so that we were able to present what you guys were thinking, because the plan commission is who blesses.
That would be
These
my
type of
comment,
things.
is that I know people go out, and if you were misled to believe that you need to have full-blown concept, as-built type design work done on your building to prove your point, whether or not, I hope that's not the case, because in this situation, just knowing that all you would have had it done is put a square on a napkin showing that this is what we plan on doing, for my purposes.
This is what we received.
I hope that didn't cost $35,000.
Well, we've got, that's along with drawings of building drawings that we actually have presented to our congregation,
Right.
knowing that we could have done this, or we're hoping to do this.
Right. So,
okay, thank you.
thank you.
Would you please state your name for the
Darla Snow,
Darla?
and I live on 2nd Street on the north side. And I am very much opposed to them closing this street. I use this street very often when I come and go, coming down here into town, or if I'm going to work, wherever. Their playground used to be on the south side of the school. And I thought it was kind of ridiculous when they moved it across the street because of the traffic. That street does get very busy, and it's not just school.
Okay.
It is a lot of people in the neighborhood. And it's not just, the church's road. They
Right.
like to take care of it like it is, but it's not. There's a lot of us that live up there that use that road. And, our property values will go down if it ends up turning into IC. And with them expanding and closing off that one section where you got to go all the way around, we have emergency medical stuff that's got to get through. Everybody comes straight up 2nd Street. It's not that they go around everything. And the ones that use the north side of 2nd Street do not go out to 14th. They go down, south.
Okay.
So, I don't know why everybody thinks they can do just whatever they want, just because it appeases them at that time. We have to abide by all the city rules. They should too. And to close a public street, that in my book is not right. Because those streets, we wouldn't have bought our properties if that street wasn't, it wasn't a thoroughfare. I didn't
Understand.
buy on a cul-de-sac. And that's exactly what it would turn into be. Because you'd have to go all the way around it in order to get somewhere. And I'm not one of those that likes to go all the way around. I'll take my straight shot.
Okay.
How far north of 12th Avenue do you live, ma'am?
I live 1301. One block. And our block is considered a double block.
Is
Thank
it
you.
on the east or the west side of the road?
I live on the west side. And we're straight south, or the school's straight south of us. So, to me, closing that down is closing off one of my entryways going into my yard.
Understand.
And for emergency vehicles and whatnot, we've had emergencies on the road. And they come up second. They don't always go all the way around. That's wasting time. I had a neighbor that died, and it mattered whether he got to the hospital on time or not. He had a blood clot. And they were there, and they did come up second. So you can't, I mean, it wasn't that that's why he died, but because the blood clot went right to his heart. But, you know, that's why I'm saying the emergency vehicles do come up 2nd Street.
Okay.
So.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Anybody else to speak for or against?
Sarah Karen Mayer. Normally, I would be pretty opposed to something like this, and I'm sure you all noticed the staff recommended approval of this, and that didn't come easily. There were numerous meetings. I did meet with the church. They had several different layouts that they proposed, trying to make this safe. And as an engineer working for the city of Watertown, I received numerous requests throughout the years for a mid-block crosswalk in this block so that they could get their kids safely across the street. And those were denied. We don't like to give mid-block crosswalks because cars aren't looking for a crosswalk in the middle of the block. This case is a little different in some respects because 2nd Street dead ends at 14th. And then it does not go all the way through. It stops and jogs over at another collector route to the south. So it isn't a major thoroughfare. However, it's very close to several collectors, east-west and north-south. So if you look at the grid, the emergency personnel that looked at this did not feel that 2nd Street would be used for an emergency vehicle going anywhere but this block. They would be coming from the south. They'd take Maple. They would not take 2nd Street because you have to jog around a couple times to get to it. So the staff felt fairly comfortable that safety was not compromised in any way. That's a big deal. However, to get access to a different layout for them that worked for them, being that they own most of both sides and maybe all of it now, was going to be challenging with that road in the way. So I just want to say that it wasn't with careless consideration that the staff recommended approval. That they did look at the circulation and safety routes. Also, the city owns this road and is responsible to replace the asphalt every 20, 30 years, overlay it every 7 years or so, put chip seal down. We remove the snow on it. We keep the curbs and gutters up. And so I don't think it's a loss to the city to take this right-of-way, which doesn't have any utilities in it, which primarily serves the church, and vacate it back to the parent parcels, which are the property on either side. In this particular case, I can't say that's been true on the other examples which were given. And it is unusual to vacate an improved road, but we did it on Broadway for similar reasons, that the overall benefit was the same. They want to expand their church. That means more traffic, not less. So I know you have a really hard decision to make, and I'm sure whatever decision that you make will be appropriate. And I get the uncomfortable position you're in this situation. But it isn't one-sided, and I don't want you to think that there wasn't a great deal of thought that went into this. So please keep that in mind when you're making your decision.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else speak for or against?
Good afternoon. I'm Jeremy Holman. I serve as Board of Education Chairman at St. Martin's School. Just for some perspective, I wanted to add that our school at this time has 147 students, and the addition that we're proposing would add another 60 students for early childhood care. There's already a lack of parking in that neighborhood for school and church. And I also want to make one comment for public service. We do offer an education to the community, and not all of the students that attend there are members of our church. And that's all that I wanted to share.
So, Jeremy, if this is turned down, are you not going to build? You're not going to revise your plans? Or?
Well, we've already revised. If you look at the lot where the school and church exists currently, it looks like there's open space on that south end, but there's an utilities easement that prevents growth there. Bethlehem Church is on the north side, and we have no room there. Logistically, with adding an early childhood center and having kids that are 3 to around 5 years old, having them located remotely is certainly not optimal, especially with our seasons and
remotely. You mean across the street?
The street, yeah, because our services for the school are all within the same location.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak for or against?
Mark Renner, principal at St. Martin's. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to address a couple of things. The woman who spoke earlier is correct. The playground used to be on the south side of the school. It was moved across the street because we have about 150 students, and there's not a lot of space down there for playground area. And so that's why the playground was moved across the street, to take advantage of the green space that's over there to be able to use that. We realized, of course, we would be having to cross the street to do that and so on. But we wanted to make sure there was enough space so that the students would be able to play safely when they went out for recess. I do have a major concern with drop-off and pickup. I am outside both in the morning when students arrive and after school when they are picked up. We've had many near misses with cars trying to avoid each other or trying to avoid students who are crossing the street. You have cars parked up and down both sides of the street for drop-off and pickup. And it's very difficult for parents to see children, even if we as teachers are out there helping them cross, coming into those crosswalks. And so it makes it difficult with drop-off and pickup. And with the parking lot that's being proposed to be put in this summer, that would eliminate that problem. We've worked with the architect to set it up so that the students would be able to be safely picked up both by the bus and by parents as they come in. And that's been an issue also. The street gets so crowded at times, it's very difficult for the bus to even sometimes be able to pull in and pick up students and drop them off both in the morning and in the afternoon. And just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Holman said as well. You asked about a benefit. We do provide an education to the community. Currently, about 15% of our students are not members of St. Martin's. If you look at the preschool, it's an even higher number that are not members of St. Martin's. And with the addition of the preschool, that would increase the number of members of the community that would be making use of the school. So with this addition, we would have even more members of the community benefiting from this.
Brandy, can you show the utility easement on the south side of that property?
Thank you very much for your comments.
I can see if there's any utilities that are shown. Otherwise, I can pull up the plat. Looks like the storm sewer, that might be that easement. Nah, that wouldn't make sense. I can look that up. If anyone else wants to speak, I'll pull it up in the meantime.
Anyone else want to speak for or against this issue?
John, I'll say a few words. The mayor summarized it pretty well. The staff did meet with church folks on several occasions. We did discuss, just for full disclosure, I mean, we discussed other options besides vacation. We talked about rerouting 2nd Street through their property, and then that would come out over along the alley that's adjacent to the east side of the property. So we did talk about rerouting 2nd Street. We've talked about vacation. Is ultimately where that landed, but fire and police department was both involved in that. Engineering and the mayor, the former mayor, was part of that discussion originally, and then subsequently Mayor Karen was brought into the discussion in her term as well. So we didn't gravitate to the vacation as the first idea, but ultimately decided that the benefit may be apparent for this section of the roadway. Primary use was identified as the school. We can do provide that traffic count data. I didn't have it prepared for this discussion, I'm sorry, but primarily it does drop off on either side of the block, a block north and a block south. So the traffic by the school probably is the driving factor in this particular block. But the mayor did summarize it very well, that this was vetted heavily through staff, and that's why we landed with the recommendation to vacate.
One last question, and I don't care who answers it, but in putting together your architectural plans, did you explore the possibility of adding on to the school west of the existing structure and putting up the parking lot across the street on the east side of 2nd Street?
We did not explore that for a couple of reasons. On the west side, that parking lot that we have is one of our main parking lots for our church at this given time, and I don't think we could sacrifice the parking spaces or gain enough for that. And then also, when we did do that church building project originally, that area there, the ground was not good. When we put the parking lot in, we went down probably 3-4 feet, put the fabric in, and so I don't feel it would be suitable for building.
Construction.
Plus, we do have a storm sewer going under there at this point in time that actually goes around the whole north side of our property and feeds into the main storm sewer on the south. And to your question, Jason, on the utilities on the south, it is only a storm sewer there. I do know that goes there. There's no other sanitary sewer, electrical, or nothing on that portion on our property. It's just a storm sewer easement there. So.
Yeah, 30 foot to the south of those properties.
Brandy, you said that there were 80 other property owners approximately that were notified up and down. Is that the number?
I think it was like 40.
40? Okay. Other comments, you had said something about an alley. That was their main concern?
Their concern, because in the letter, the legal description mentioned portions of vacated alleys. So that was when people had contacted me, it was more so because they wanted to make sure that the alleys in the area weren't being affected, that they weren't subject to be vacated too. They just wanted clarification.
Okay. Thank you.
If you look at Exhibit A from Clark Engineering, that shows what alleys were vacated and which ones remained.
It's not that I have an objection to what they're trying to do, but I'm trying to think about other areas of the community where you could have similar situations. I think of Skyline Drive between Holy Name and the old school there. If they wanted to do something and wanted to close off that section, what would we do in that situation?
Okay. Is there anybody here that wants to speak for or against the issue in the public hearing? If not, I'll close the public hearing and we'll ask for a motion in a second so we can discuss this.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Kays. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Stein. Discussion?
That was my question amongst the board, was just that I know there are similar situations with public, quasi-public uses across the city that may or may not have similar access from a collector standpoint to a local street standpoint, and with fully developed city streets. And I think it might be premature to be vacating those types of streets without some sort of policy on what we should do on similar requests. I think we lay the foundation with the decision here.
I agree with your concerns. I think if we grant this, I think 200 Maple Place in Jenkins will be back, and perhaps IC School will be back, and maybe Holy Name. It's a slippery slope once we start vacating streets.
Could I speak, Mr. Stonebarger?
Miss Mayor, do you have a question or a comment?
A comment about policy. There has been a policy, and we have a lot of new staff members that maybe don't realize that the city does have a policy that it's against vacation in general, unless it can be shown that there's a benefit to the public for doing the vacation. And in this case, the benefit was seen as, that there's the safety element to the students who attend that school. That's one benefit. This is seen as a benefit to safety overall. And then the lack of need to maintain this section of roadway is a financial benefit to the city taxpayers, because it is expensive to maintain roads. And those may not seem like large benefits, but there should be a benefit. There should always be a benefit to the public before you would vacate any right-of-way, improved or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I'm not wild about vacating the street right from the start. However, I also don't think that's necessarily setting precedent for Maple Place or Holy Name or some of the other examples, because each is a case-by-case basis. And in this particular example situation, unless we as a board purport to know more than the city officials with their recommendation of vacating this street, then I don't feel comfortable in that. I feel that we should go with the city's recommendation.
I guess my frustration is the lack of a traffic count. On the one hand, we say there's not much traffic, and on the next issue, we say, it's terrible traffic and it's a safety issue. I guess I'd like to see a traffic count and then compare that to other schools in the area, whether it be Millette or Lincoln, and say, what is the traffic count on similar schools?
I'll make a comment to that. All of those other schools that you reference, and primarily all of the public schools, I would say almost all of them, with the exception of maybe Jefferson and the new middle school, abut a major collector street in our community. This side of this school is on a more residential side, so it's not going to be an apples to apples, but I do think it would be meritorious to compare the traffic counts north and south of this block, and I think you'll see that they'll be different. In other words, that most of the traffic that goes through this block segment it's anticipated that it's turning off of the streets on either end of the block and not continuing north or south. And I will look for that data and present it if that's your wish. The only factor with that is then if you're going to hold that up, I'm presuming that you would table this decision then, or to give me time to do that, or what's your thought, Train?
I would tend to agree with Jason. On one hand, we're hearing, nope, it's not going to matter. We're shutting it down. There's not that much traffic. But then on the flip side, but it's a safety concern. So I don't have a mixed messaging there.
And I think that's the safety concern is you're still mixing that traffic that's serving the school. So I think that's a legitimate concern. And if they reconfigure their parking lot the way they are, they're going to eliminate most of that conflict from, albeit a lot of that conflict might be internally just because of their geometry of their existing facility relating to 2nd Street. But
it's school-related traffic, and I don't know that the traffic count is going to tell you very much other than there's a lot of cars and they don't continue to the north. What does that mean? I mean, or the south. It's school-related traffic, and if there's not a lot, I mean, I don't know what you're going to do with that information. There is a lot of traffic, but it's felt that it's school-related traffic, and so if the school is reconfigured and the road is closed off, cars will take the collector out right 1 block away to get to the school, and they'll be coming in a different way. So.
And I agree with that. There's also the philosophy that people may always want something more than what they have. Now, they may want to build a bigger house than what they have. My answer to that usually is then buy more property or locate what it is that you want to do in a certain location. So I'm not trying to be crass. I'm not trying to be indifferent to the request. But sometimes you can only do with what you got. And so those are things that are weighing in my head.
I would like to say, too, in case you're concerned that the staff led the applicant on, I don't think that's the case. Every conversation that I had with them and that the staff had with them where I was present, we always said that ultimately this needs to be approved by the public bodies, the Plan Commission and then the City Council. If the Plan Commission fails to approve this, they can still move it forward, and they would get another shot with the City Council, but it would be a higher standard for their approval. I think they'd need a 2/3 vote instead of super majority. Not positive on that for vacation, but yeah.
Is there any further discussion? Is there any impetus to delay this until we get a traffic count, or do we feel we can make a decision today?
I tend to agree with the mayor. I don't think the traffic count is, at this point in time, is going to be substantive enough to make a decision one way or the other. I think really it becomes more of a long-range policy decision, and whether or not who is truly benefited. Is it the public at large, or is it the benefit the school or the church? And I think there's a difference when you think public. Public doesn't just mean, the 2 or 3, I'm not trying to be indifferent, but public is public. It's the entire community. Mm-hmm. And is there a public benefit to the entire community by closing down this street or keeping it open? And that's the decision I think we have to make amongst ourselves as a recommendation to the council.
But I just think it's important to recognize that I don't think that we are setting a precedent. I think we're taking this as a very specific, very unique case, and there are some very unique circumstances surrounding it. And I don't, for one, think that is opening the floodgates to having people come back and so on and so forth.
I think you'd be surprised. I think what we do here will have a precedent. But That being said, any other comments? Okay, I will ask for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no?
No.
No. Roll call, please.
Stein,
Yes.
Olson,
No.
Stormbarger,
No.
Hanson,
No.
Kays.
No.
4-1 vote. It is
Motion is
denied.
denied. But they can take it to the city council and have another shot. Okay, item number 4, rezone of lots number 1 through 5 of Block 5 Valley View Edition.
Okay. Make it to my sound. Okay. The petitioner is Jamie Andrews, who is the acting agent for J&J Land Sales. The petitioner submitted the application and petition on February 16th, 2018, requesting approval for rezoning the current described property from R1 single-family residential district and R3 multifamily residential district, all to R2 single-family attached district. Here on the exhibit that was submitted with the petition, lots 1 through 4 are what are currently zoned R1, which is single-family residential, and then lot 5 is currently zoned R3 multifamily residential. When Valley View First Edition was annexed and zoned in 2017, the Plan Commission and City Council approved what is depicted in the attached exhibit to the petition that was submitted for this rezone. When the developer, J&J Land Sales, presented the preliminary plan to Plan Commission, they approved the resolution with the condition that Lot 5, Block 5 would not be zoned R3, but instead R2. This request was never memorialized by a rezone, which is what this petition is doing for Lot 5, Block 5 for Valley View First Edition. The remaining lots also included in this rezone are currently zoned R1 and are being proposed to be changed to R2 along with Lot 5, Block 5. So the entire block would be zoned R2. The R2 single-family attached residential district allows for the following permitted uses. Any permitted use within the R1 district, 2 family residential dwellings or a type 1 manufactured home, which are described in 217101. Some facts for this is the existing zoning designations, as I've said, are R1 and R3. Adjacent to this property, to the east, it's not annexed, it's in the county, so ag, presumably. And then to the north, south, and west, it is all zoned R1 single-family residential district. And the rezone will extend and apply to the center line of the adjacent public right-of-ways.
Randy, I have a question. When we approved the plot, we said we approved it if that would be R2, but that was not memorialized? I mean, I thought when we approved the plot, that's...
John, I can explain.
Okay.
When we annex property into the city, we have to zone it.
Yeah.
And so it got annexed and zoned prior to the approval of the preliminary plan. So those comments came out of the preliminary plan, and we would have had to go through this process to rezone it anyway.
But
so
when we platted it, we says, Mr. Dolly said, we don't normally put R3 next to R1. That should be R2.
Correct.
We all agreed in that.
Correct.
And then we approved the plat.
Right. So the original zoning was established during annexation and would require subsequent action similar to what you're seeing today.
So this
to
is
rezone
basically
it.
paperwork to cover up that?
This is cleaning that
Approval?
up.
Yes.
Okay.
Because they were under the impression that it was R2.
Okay.
And then when they came forward with this request, then we actually said we have to also include Lot 5 as well as lots 1 through 4 and do it all together because technically Lot 5 is still R3. So it is cleaning that up.
My question, why are we down zoning lots 1 through 4?
I think they want to develop that whole block as R2 and then and those lots are, especially lot 1 is very small when you get the setbacks in there.
So going from single family to R2 is,
how does that change?
How's that work?
Well, they'll reconfigure and replat.
So but
the minimum lot width in an R2 and an R1 is still 75 feet?
Right. It's just that I can't speak for the developer, but
I'll ask the question.
Yeah.
So if we approve this to R2, they're going to replat it, so that may not be 5 lots there, there may be 2, 3, whatever?
Right.
Okay.
I just have questions for the applicant.
With that, I'll open the public hearing. Does anybody here speak for or against?
Jamie with J&J Land Sales. We have a pending sale agreement for that whole block. It's all going to be twin homes, is what the plan is with that entire parcel.
Do you know the number of twin homes or how many parcels are going to be subdivided out of that?
It'll be 9 buildings, so it'd be a total of 18 units. And has staff seen the preliminary design, whether or not we'd have to replat that to make that happen?
We have talked to them preliminarily to discuss all the issues that would be approached if they did replat.
They would have to replat, though,
yes.
The Block 3 portion anyway?
Yep.
Well, I think that they would like to put them into lots so they can sell them. You guys are planning on selling them instead of renting?
Well, I don't think
to clean it up.
We have no say on whether they're rental or sold. I mean, they're 2-family homes. Has any property sold adjacent to this property where the perception was that lots 1 through 4 were going to stay in an R1? I mean, any lots to the west or the south of that?
No.
Okay. That would be my concern if people have purchased property across the street thinking that that's supposed to be R1 and then it becomes R2.
No, and we feel this is a nice location for a twin home community, being close to the trail and everything like that. Our builder that's purchasing this is getting a lot of interest, which is a good thing.
Any other questions for Jamie? Thank you. Anybody else here to speak for or against? With that, I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion to replat from R3 to R2?
I make a motion to rezone the property as requested, just with the caveat that we will see a new plat. We will see a plat as it develops.
Okay,
our preliminary discussions was that a plat would be coming forward.
And then I would support that. Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Kays. Were you going to make a comment, Brandy?
No, I just was saying rezone. When you asked for the motion, you said replat.
Oh, sorry. Rezone. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Ms. Olson seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The rezone passes. Item number 5, ordinance amended to Chapter 21-1003.
The proposed ordinance amendment modifies the chart outlining the maximum mean height requirements for non-residential structures, specifically the I-1 Light Industrial District. The maximum mean heights were previously amended on September 19th of 2016 when commercial zones were increased to allow for taller buildings. Multiple variances had been given for an increased maximum mean height, which prompted the ordinance amendment. This is also true for I-1 Light Industrial Districts and should have been included during the previous approved ordinance amendment. City staff supports Plan Commission recommending Resolution 2018-05 as presented to City Council.
So Brandy, if we're going to change this to 60 feet, why don't we do I-2 and BP at the same time? Because I-2 is still 50 feet, and C1, 2, and 3, and now I-1 would be 60 feet, and I-2 is a lot larger yard.
Okay.
I'm the person who originally brought this up the last time when it should have been in there, and that's fine. Hey, throw them all three in there. That's great.
I would rather do
Just
it
a
all in
minute
one
till the whole
shot
work's be
rather
done.
than. Can we do that without advertising it, or?
We can at the planning commission, I think.
It'll be re-advertised when it goes to city council anyway. So.
And the reason why I-2 probably wasn't included is because there's just more I-1 districts where it was apparent that there just weren't as many requests for I-2.
But
like with commercial.
I would rather make them all 60 feet right now rather than have to grant variances down the road.
Right. Yep.
Personally. Anyone here to speak? I'll open the public hearing. Anybody here speak for or against this change? I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion to address I-1, I-2, and BP, or just I-1?
Did we discuss going to 60 feet on all of them, or are we going to go proportionally?
Yeah, the motion for 60 feet for all three would be accepted, or however you would like to make the motion. That's why I said, is there a motion for I-1 only, or I-1, I-2, and BP?
I'll make a motion to change the maximum mean height in I-1, I-2, and BP to 60 feet. I'll make a motion to increase the maximum mean height for I-1, I-2, and BP districts to 60 feet.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, Plat of lots 28A and 28B in Block 2 of the Hidden Valley Edition.
Okay, the petitioner is Dr. Robert Arnold, who is the owner of the property. And then Dennis Arnold is not included as a proprietor on the plat, but he did, we'll cover that coming up, but he did dedicate the turnaround easement. The petitioner submitted a replat requesting approval to split lot 28 of Block 2 Hidden Valley Edition into two conforming lots, Lot 28A and 28B in Block 2 of Hidden Valley Edition, which was heard by the Plan Commission on June 22nd of 2018. Plan Commission approved the plat at the time with the condition that a turnaround easement be negotiated with adjacent landowners. The updated plat of lots 28A and 28B in Block 2 of Hidden Valley Edition include a reconfigured right-of-way dimension, which is included to accommodate for the alternative to the 120-foot hammerhead turnaround easement for Pompesca Drive, which has historically came to a dead end, causing issues for adjacent landowners, garbage pickup, snow removal, and the general public. Some facts about where this plat is located, or these lots are. The adjacent zoning designations are R3, multifamily residential district to the south, A1, agricultural district to the east, and R1, single family residential district to the east, north, and west. Lots 28A and 28B of Block 2 are currently zoned R3 multifamily residential district and will remain that zoning. 21, 1003 non-residential height and placement regulations will be followed for the R3 district. The plat will create 2 conforming lots from 1 existing lot. Pompesca Drive will be extended by 30 feet to the north and will be dedicated for public right-of-way by this plat. The access road turnaround easement granted to the city of Watertown by this plat, which is located on Dennis Arnold's property, described as Outlot A of the plat entitled Prairie Hills Development 2nd Edition. Dennis has signed off on the easement, which is not on the proprietor's certificate. That's not attached to the plat, and that's what was handed out to you all because it's a separate easement document. It is referenced on the plat, but it was not dedicated per plat.
So please use your little pointer thing and show that 35 feet. Is that where the turnaround's going to be?
Yep.
Or so you back into it and back around and turn out?
And there's that depiction on the request
the
for
original
action, but
one.
I'll pull it up here too. So it'll be flipped, obviously, but
So
as
that's
long as
180 degrees around
yes,
from
yep.
where it's supposed to. Okay.
So it'll be 70 feet in length from edge of pavement to edge of pavement, and then 20 feet wide.
So does this match up then with plans for development to the east? As far as that, would this extend back to east then? Long range?
No, there's a wetland
Oh, okay.
bordering this property, so this would just serve as a turnaround only for both public and public services.
Okay.
Yep. And what you guys will be seeing in the future too, Dennis Arnold was okay with me alluding to, he has submitted a plat that he would like to plat some lots that are not within that wetland, designated wetland, to the east side of the road, which this turnaround easement is in those plans, and it's configured that it's not going to affect.
So the city doesn't have any problems that's big enough for a road grader or a garbage truck to turn around without issues?
This diagram came from the fire department.
Yeah, it's meant to accommodate emergency services, so should accommodate all other traffic.
Okay.
And that will be improved or paved or?
Yep. That will be included in the development agreement that'll go to city council. That they will, they'll do the initial improvements, and then it'll be up to the city to maintain, because it mainly is for city services as well as the general public, which we should accommodate to give them a place to turn around so they're not turning around in the other neighbors' driveways.
Okay.
And then as well as the additional 30 feet of Pompesca, then that'll be curb and gutter or a curb cut in the end?
No curb. It'll be extended in like condition as the current roadway, which is asphalt pavement with no curb and gutter.
Any other questions for Brandy? With that, I'll open the public hearing. If anybody's here to speak for or against, please come out and state your name. Okay, I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion for discussion purposes.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Kays.
A second.
Second by Mr. Stein. Any discussion? So there's no provisions for any sidewalks or anything like that? Or
The remainder of the neighborhood is built with a single asphalt pavement, no curb or sidewalk on any of that at this time.
so we could do a waiver right to protest for sidewalk and curb and gutter, and
You could require that if you wish.
I would think you would automatically require full standard street and sidewalks and everything that any other developer would be required to put in.
I will amend my previous motion.
Mr. Kays amends his motion. Mr. Stein seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Randy, you understood what my motion was? Randy, you understood what my motion was to include the waiver of right to protest.
Okay. Thank you.
Item number 7, plot of the Flyway First Edition.
Okay. Let me pull up the plat. And so the reason why you were presented with an amended plat is because we requested an additional 10-foot utility easement, which is required by ordinance on that lot line. So that's what changed from what was in your packet. The petitioner, Gary Steinmetz, is the acting agent for the Flyway Properties LLC and is the owner of the property located in Airport Industrial Edition. The petitioner submitted a plat of Flyway First Edition on April 16th, 2018, requesting approval for subdividing the existing Airport Industrial Edition into 5 conforming lots with I-1 light industrial and I-2 industrial zoning designations. Lots 1 through 4, as you guys remember, probably were rezoned from I-2 to I-1. Adjacent zoning designations are I-2 heavy industrial district to the north, south, and east, agricultural district to the west, and there are no adjacent I-1 light industrial zoning except for what is existing. There's approximately 593, never mind, we don't need that. City staff supports Plan Commission recommending resolution number 2018-07, the plat of Flyway First Edition as presented to City Council.
So those lots 1 through 4, they're zoned I-2?
They're I-1, light
They're
industrial.
I-1.
And then lot 5, which was reconfigured in this plat because when they subdivided those 4 lots off, this former lot 2 was made non-conforming because it didn't front a public street.
Okay.
And also for the size requirement because all of lot 5 now is remaining I-2.
Is lot number 4, does that have sufficient buildable space on it after setbacks to be I-1?
Yeah, the side yard setback in the I-1, I'll verify, is 20 feet. And at least on the east side, the easement is incorporated into that setback.
Okay.
There will be a detention pond in that area.
They can't build over the easement?
No. So they would have to be on the west side of that
if you
easement.
take 20 foot off the west side, how much land do they still have to build up in that corner?
Total, it is 217.83 feet.
Well, on that side of it, but what about the north side?
Subtracting the easement.
Yeah.
It's a
What's the question?
40-foot.
Okay, the north part of that is kind of like a little triangle. If you take out, you can't build on top of the easement. So, and you got 20 foot on the west side that you can't build on. So how much does that leave on the north part of lot 4 to build on? North part. Go up.
Well, there's a 30-foot utility easement. I mean, a 40-foot utility easement there that.
So you got to go over 40 foot.
So
it's 107 apparently up there. You go over 40 foot, that gives you 60 foot. So you got 40 foot on the north part of that lot. Is that what you're saying? That you can build on?
What's the west side?
What?
No, this west is 20 feet. The side yard on the west side would be 20 feet.
Yes. But as far as for the lot requirements for platting it, it is sufficient. It's 51 or about 52,000.
I understand that. I just don't want a variance request to come back because,
Exactly.
we granted a substandard lot or close to a substandard lot.
Because the rear yard requirement is what, Kenny?
30.
So he'll have 60 feet width there if once you bring that lot down. He'll have 60 feet
Okay.
wide to build on the north end.
Just trying to get an idea. Any other questions for Brandy? With that, I'll open the public hearing. Is anybody here to speak for or against the replat? I'll close the public hearing. Ask for a motion for discussion purposes.
I'll make that motion.
Ms. Olson makes the motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Hanson seconds it. Any discussion? Motion to approve? Or, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any new business?
Yes. Let me get the definition open. Okay, so staff was approached about looking into group homes in reference to a transitional halfway home that a community member would like to start. So when we looked at it, group homes, by definition, is a supervised living or counseling arrangement in a family home context providing for the 24-hour care of children or adults. The person thought it'd be more appropriate if we put a definition in for transitional homes. And then also, and Ken, if you remember, which zones are group homes currently? They're allowed in R3.
2 and 3.
R2 and 3.
Yep.
As a conditional use.
Correct.
And so what we were looking into is if C1 would be appropriate to add that type of use as a conditional use too. And we were talking group homes. But now if we would just come up with a completely different definition for what transitional homes would be to include the halfway home situation and add it to...
Group home, right now, that's children and, what, young adults?
And adults.
So what's transitional? What are you referring to?
Well, they were thinking, let me get my notes.
Because I don't know if children in the commercial district would be appropriate.
No, it would be adults. It would be adults coming from like drug court and coming back into the community. So they would have certain regulations for them that they would have to be saving X amount of dollars. They would be supervised. There would be services for them.
Is that drug court and sex offenders and stuff like that, or is it just drug court, or what do we?
Wouldn't we be looking at having, you have a group home, and then this would be a type of a group home because it's still under the umbrella of group home, but you'd have to say that a group home that is solely for adults that are alcoholic or drug addictions that are receiving some sort of protected class.
Right.
That's what we're looking. We're not talking about sex offenders and other felons and things like that.
No, because then that comes with other requirements too of where they can be placed.
Right. I'm just looking for clarification.
And so basically what Todd explained, that could be the definition. It could be called a transitional house. Or are you thinking keep it group home?
I still like the idea of a group home, but then the group home, there's a subclassification of group homes because it's still a group home. If I've got more than have people living together that are unrelated.
But we have to designate it somehow so we're not getting a children group home in there.
So couldn't we call that transitional home? Just give it a new definition and add it into like the C1 district?
But then what would preclude me from doing the same thing in an R2 or R3 district? Are you going to add transitional zones transitional homes to R2s and R3s?
I don't think that. That's up to you guys. I think the request was for C1.
So you're kind of limiting it to the C1 area. So that's why you're changing the name. Make transitional or only allowed in C1, not in R1 and R2 or R3.
Let's go back though. If if we perceive group home today, meaning people that are children or adults under some sort of supervised care, whether that be, that could very well be alcohol or drug counseling, but if we change that to transitional housing, what residential district could I still do adult drug and alcohol treatment?
Couldn't.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to find a place under federal law to do that. Fair Housing Act stipulates that you have to have residential neighborhoods available for that sort of thing. So if we go to transitional, that's where I'm going with it. I don't care what you call it, but we don't
add it to other ones.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's
As a conditional
good.
use, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess you'll be coming up with a definition, huh?
Yep, and then that'll be heard by you guys. It'll be an ordinance amendment. So, and
My request that you come up with a definition, come up with its appropriate districts, and come up with some specific performance standards that would give us some direction in when we're laying out conditions.
sounds good. That's all for new business.
Any old business?
Okay, for the old business, we are going to just give a quick update on our meeting with the park board on February 27th for the River Ridge Park Edition and the new concept that they came back to the park board with.
Okay.
Let me pull it up here. Okay, so this was what was presented, the new location for the park. Previously, as you guys remember, it was approved by park board and by the preliminary plan that was approved by plan commission. It was in this area. The requirement for this quarter section was 8.62 acres of park dedication for land. They were proposing 5 acres and then money in lieu of the difference between the 3.62 acres.
Okay, when you're talking money, I assume you're talking beer land money for not lot money, correct?
Yeah.
So they're going to pay $500 and call it even, is what you're saying, rather than a $40,000 for a lot.
Right. So when we presented...
So they got 3 more lots out of the deal.
Not necessarily. When we presented it to the park board, and they looked at it, they did not like the location. So then the conversation spun to if they would accept no park in this area, would not dedicate land, and they would just accept money in lieu of the 8.62 acres. So their recommendation was for the engineering department to work with the director of equalization and look at what the land value was in 1997 when it was annexed, and then incorporate the consumer price index. So what that came to was $5,236.39. That this number has not been presented to the park board. So, but upon talking with staff, obviously this number is not acceptable. So then the park board will have to go back and look and decide if this isn't acceptable, what is, and maybe they do want parkland instead.
Okay, let's just back up from a history lessons perspective. Back when the original preliminary plan was proposed for this quarter section of land that was to be developed, there was agreed upon area for parkland dedication, where there was actually going to be a park constructed and there wasn't going to be a cash transaction. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Then the developers came back before the board and said, we want to actually develop those lots where we had a park dedication. We all had an agreement.
They were concerned because they would have to pay too much to put in the street, so they wanted a narrower street frontage for a park.
But where was the original, the very, very first park dedication aspect? It was supposed to be on the south end, right across the street from the church, correct?
Yep.
And that's what everybody agreed to. The developer came back and said, no, let's move it someplace else. We promised to move park somewhere else. And the planning commission agreed to it, the city council agreed to it, and the park board agreed to it. I'm just trying to get my bearings, right? So now, when they came back and offered to put 8 acres, which was the requirement, which was going to go to the south, but now it's on the north, the park board says, we don't like that location. We'll want it back over here closer to 2nd Street. And so now the question is, do we, now the offer's been made that, well, we'll just assume, maybe the park board's saying, well, we'll just take cash over the 5 acres. My question is, are there any other locations in the city of Watertown where you have a quarter section of land where there isn't at least a public park in it? I know the answer is no.
Right.
And so the question is why would the Park and Rec Board decide to forego public space in that area for maybe what they don't know is a pittance?
Well, isn't the agree or disagree, but isn't the answer to that the Park and Rec Board feels that they have enough green space, that's kind of why they were agreeing with it or agreeable to it?
There is no green space. You have to walk a half a mile.
I don't think that was the idea. I think they wanted to evaluate what the money in lieu would come to. I mean, they need to look at this figure. This hasn't been presented to them yet, so that might change. Then they might say, okay, that's.
But I think the ordinance need to be interpreted, because right now the ordinance says they will take a cash value in lieu of land. Now, it doesn't specify cash value before it's incorporated in the city or cash value after it's busted up into lots. And in my opinion, it should be cash value after it's busted up into individual lots.
I think it's even more than that. I think the Park and Rec Board has the ability to choose whether or not they take land or cash, but the Planning Commission has the ability to choose whether or not they approve a preliminary plat. And then if the Planning Commission doesn't approve a preliminary plat because they initially thought that there was supposed to be park land that everybody agreed to 20 years ago. Again, this is a new guy coming on the board.
And they also did designate 8 acres up there on 26th or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And they were going to do, that's what we approved the plat for 8 acres up there. And now it's changed to 5 acres and $5,000.
But now, if the park board says, well, we'll just take the cash as opposed to that, I still think the Planning Commission said we wanted park ground. Mm-hmm. We wanted some green, open space park ground when the plat was brought in 20 years ago.
And because no matter what, this will change the preliminary plan, so the Plan Commission will see it again when the next development wants to come forth.
So let's run this out another step. Say the park board says we want cash, and the Planning Commission says we're not going to approve a preliminary plat without public parkland dedication. Where does it go from there, Mr. Attorney?
The developer, I think, would just be stuck.
That's what I thought.
There's some tension in the ordinances that way, so they'd probably have to go back to the park board and renegotiate.
We have a lot of small parcels of green space, but this is a rare opportunity to get a large park in the city of Watertown. I mean, I can remember, well, I grew up by Diamond Ball. It's an entire block. And you got a lot of entire block parks in the south side of town. The only thing you have up north is Highland Park. Other than that, you've got very small, tiny little nothing parks.
Right. Valid points. And where this update will go is we will relay it to the park board, what the discussion was here, and then see what they come back with, I guess. And we'll try to facilitate that, and what your desires are and what their desires are.
And one more time, just to recap, when was the property originally annexed, and how much park ground was supposed to be done at that time?
In 1997, and in 99, the ordinance was in place that 5% of the land annexed or master planned should be set aside for parks or playgrounds.
And so how many acres did that 5% equal? And
8.62 acres.
And they agreed to delay apparently the Planning Commission agreed to delay a park until they developed the north half of the property after they decided they weren't going to put it down south. And so now that they're developing the north half of the property, they have to come up with some parkland.
Mhm.
And originally it was supposed to be 8 point, what,
Yeah, 8 acres.
well, we agreed on 8 acres.
Right. That I guess that would be interesting or informative from, for me anyway. I guess is that if, kind of to Mr. Case's point, if we approve a plat with, or 1996 when they approved the plat and the current board approves the development and so on and so forth, the zoning and all that jazz. The Park and Rec board can kind of make their own side deals. I guess I wasn't aware of that.
Well, the ordinance reads, the board may allow the owner to donate a sum in cash equal to 5% of the value of the property to be annexed or master planned, but in no event no less than $100. Such decision shall be solely at the board's discretion. The value shall be determined by the Director of Equalization, and if not accepted by the owner, the valuation may be appealed to the City Council within 30 days after notification to the owner in writing by the board.
Which comes up as soon as they annex it, that land goes up in value. So is it the value prior to annexation or after annexation? And in my opinion, it should be the value after we annex it. So if they're going to sell those for $40,000 a lot, and they're 1 acre lots, that should be $120,000 that the park board gets.
My issue is not so much, again, whether the developer should give money or should give land. I think that's already been determined. They're supposed to give land. That's what happened in 1997. I still think that there's a need for some public green space in that area. And so my beef right now is more or less is if the Park and Rec Board decides that they would rather take cash as opposed to land, I think that's problematic.
I agree with you, but I believe it's up to the
I
Park
don't.
and Rec.
I think the Planning Commission is the board that is the planning commission. We are planning for the community.
Mm-hmm.
And
be interesting to figure out.
And I think maybe what it ends up being is I would recommend that if that's the case, the Park and Rec Board and the Planning Commission maybe should get together and talk about a master park program where we identify places for parks before development occurs.
That was also a discussion at the park board, that they would definitely be in favor of that.
Okay.
And that would make it easier that everybody can collaborate and we can plan out where these parks are supposed to be so they're not getting pushed to odd corners of the development.
So when's the Park and Rec meet?
The last Tuesday of every month. But we talked to Jay, and he's not opposed to pulling together like a noon meeting where maybe it would work for all of you or some of you at least. And
Works for me. I'm not sure if it works for people that actually are employed.
But yeah, I mean, we just wanted to get the update and get your thoughts on it, and we'll facilitate that conversation. But if you guys can be a part and come to the meeting, that'd be great too.
I think that would be a good idea.
Sounds good. That's it for.
Prior to that meeting, if you could prepare a map that shows the general locations of the public parks as they are dispersed throughout the community, because I think that's really what drives the discussion for me.
Right.
Yep.
I have a question. I have a couple of them, but for brevity, I'll only ask one. Last meeting, we asked that you come up with our variances for the last 3 years.
We're still working on that.
Okay. So it's coming, basically. It hasn't been forgotten.
It has not been forgotten. No.
Okay, and we're still working on a definition for home occupation.
And we're still working on that too.
Okay. That's all I have. Anything else?
Nope.
Mr. Stein, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'm ready for you. Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Olson, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
So, did I understand that right?